you? Are you ready for chapter 20? Here we go. For the next few hours, Flora listened to the sounds of the sheriff killing rats. During the silences, she imagined Sophia licking her paw for a moment before going after her next victim. Good for you, Flora whispered. She tried to get comfortable and let her mind wander to her real job, the one the captain would give her once they got to their destination. She laid her head down, and a snowy scene filled her mind. There were no trees, no grass, no stones. There were no creatures, only whiteness. Then over the snow came a sled team with a pig at the lead. A blizzard roared down out of nowhere until the dogs couldn't see 10 feet ahead of them. Their leader didn't need to see. She knew the way by heart. She was unstoppable. Don't you give up on me, she shouted to the dogs behind her. She knew they were exhausted. Remember this, a sled team is tough. A sled team is strong. We don't give up, and we're a little bit crazy. Flora gave a hop and a wiggle to show her boys how unafraid she was, and then she pulled with all her might. The sledge surged forward. Flora slept and dreamed until a new sound woke her up. It was a cross between a moan and a meow. Sophia? The cat queen mewed near Flora's ears. Near her ear. I can't do it. She looked terrible. One of her ears was bloody. A patch of fur was missing from her shoulder. I'm a failure, she moaned. Nothing but a hairball, worthless. What happened? Flora sat up. How many rats did you kill? 0, Sophia wailed. They ganged up on me. Flora couldn't help feel a tiny quiver of satisfaction. I wish I could help. I shouldn't need help. Sophia threw herself down on the boards. Cats are supposed to be independent. Sophia tried not to look happy. You need a team. Sophia licked her paw mournfully and then looked up. I do not. I'm a loner. Flora shook her head to make the chain rattle. Maybe you could take a crack at this rope around my neck after all. Sophia studied it doubtfully. Then she began to gnaw at the rope. After a few minutes, she gave a very uncat-like squeak. Did you get it? Asked Flora. No, moaned Sophia. I think I broke a tooth. Just then, something heavy thudded at the top of the stairs, and the door opened with a bang. Now I'm going to teach you a lesson for good. Amos came into view. In one hand, he held Flora's slops, and he had a stick under his arm. With his other hand, he dragged a lump that thumped down each step. At the bottom, Amos dropped the lump in a heap. You got a new job. He gave the heap a kick. I caught you stealing food like a rat. Now you can catch rats or you don't eat. Here. Amos threw down the stick. Bang their heads with this. Lantern and matches are on the stairs. I wouldn't have to steal if you fed me enough. The heap lifted its head. Alaric. Amos put the bowl of pig food down and turned back to the boy. You and that lazy cat had better kill rats every day, and you don't eat at all, or you don't eat at all anymore. Amos grabbed the bowl and Flora finished. Only the pig eats for free. He stomped to the top of the stairs and slammed the door. Flora flinched. She knew she needed her strength. Still, she hadn't felt good about digging into a bowl full of food while Sophia and Alaric stood by hungry. Alaric picked up the stick and pounded on the stairs. I won't be treated like a prisoner. No one came from the top. He's in worse shape than I am, whispered Sophia. If cats were the compassionate sort, I would feel sorry for him. The boy sat on the stairs and put his head on his knees. Flora and Sophia waited and watched. When they got tired of waiting, they curled up together and fell asleep. Look at. Oh, this is so sad. I see them sleeping at Alaric's feet. boy. Flora woke up in the night from Sophia tapping on her nose. Flora sat up. What's wrong? Shh, watch this. Sophia was looking toward a flicker of light moving about in the shadows. He's hunting. Sometimes the light would race one way or another, and sometimes the boy's stick could be heard banging against the floor of the walls of the ship. He doesn't know what he's doing, whispered Sophia. You can't hunt rats with a lantern. They'll run and hide. It was true. Flora could hear rats at the opposite end of the hold shuffling around in the dark, but the boy didn't seem to hear a thing. The next morning, Amos tromped down with a bowl of food and a scowl on his face. He glared at Alaric, who lifted his head from the bottom of the stairs where he had spent the night. He kicked at Sophia, who scuttled out of sight and out of reach of his boots, but he didn't say a word. Flora could smell the delicious mixture even before the bowl was set in front of her. The leftovers were still warm. She was hungry as usual, but she wouldn't eat while her companions had nothing, so she stayed where she was and watched Amos's face. Pig, eat, he shouted. The food smells made Flora's stomach growl and quiver. Now everything's wrong on this boat, Amos hollered. Rats and thieves eat the food upstairs. The pig doesn't eat food downstairs. I'll never be a cook on a boat again. And he grabbed the bowl away. As he grabbed the bowl away, a great splash of gravy and food slopped on the floor. Amos paid no attention. Marching up the stairs, he glared at Alaric again. You killed 20 rats. I give you another chance. As soon as the door closed, Flora followed her nose to the spot where the food had spilled. Sophia was already sniffing the edges. When Flora heard clicking, she whispered, Sophia, stand clear. It sounds like the rats are ready to try again. Sophia slinked out of sight. A crowd of whiskers and beady eyes appeared in the dim light. Noses twitched as the rats drew closer to the delicious smell. Flora eased herself into position, ready to bring the hammer down on a rat head. Unfortunately, these were the smart ones. They warily stayed at the edge of the shadows. After a while, Flora slumped down and pretended to be asleep. She made little snoring noises and watched out of the slits of her eyes. A trio of rats came out of the shadows and began licking the gravy. Flora trembled with excitement, but she waited. 2 more rats joined. Flora jumped to her feet and spun around. Pow! She let loose and felt her hooves connect with the pair of heads. Slam! She lashed out again. Sophia flashed from one twitching body to another. When Flora and Sophia stood back and looked at their handiwork, they saw 3 more. Wow! Flora turned to see Alaric. He had lifted the lantern again. Now he stood gazing at them and the rats. You guys are amazing! What a team! He reached out and scratched between Flora's ears. It felt heavenly. Sophia didn't even bother to say anything about cats and teams. Instead, she rubbed Alaric's legs. 3 rats! Alaric stood up. It's a good start. He reached down again, and Flora thought he was going to give her head another scratch, but instead, she felt his fingers working at the rope around her neck and felt the weight of the chain disappear. Come on, team. Alaric lifted his lantern to show the way. Let's get to work. That's the end of chapter 20. Let's do 21. At first, Flora couldn't see how they could possibly succeed without bait to bring the rats to them. But Alaric led Sophia and Flora behind a wooden post and put his fingers to his lips. Then he slipped away. From the other end of the hold, a terrific banging began along the wall and floor. The knocking and thumping came closer and closer, and soon they could hear the sound of thousands of tiny feet running toward them. Flora tensed her muscles. Turn around and wait for it, Sophia whispered. I'll tell you as soon as they are in place. Flora turned. Now, said Sophia. Flora fired her back feet again, behind her. The rats were thrown into a panic. They ran this way and that. Flora kicked and kicked while Sophia dashed in for the cleanup. As the remaining rats disappeared in the dimness, the lantern bobbed toward them. Alaric fell to his knees, counting in a low voice. Nice work, 4 more. He laid his stick down and scratched both of his teammates on the head. What would I do without you guys? He tossed the dead rats in a pile and then was up again. Flora and Sophia took their places for another round. By the time Big Amos came downstairs with breakfast, Flora was back on her chain. Sophia and Alaric stood behind 12 rats in 2 piles, waiting for the cook. Flora looked on with pride. The rats had been hunted down with skill and teamwork. Big Amos peered at the boy and cat as if trying to understand what had happened. You two wait for me. He put Flora's slops out. He went back upstairs and returned with his hands full. Good kitty. He put a plate down for Sophia and patted the cat on the head. Food for Rat Boy, too. Fresh biscuits and scrambled eggs from above deck. Come with me and throw these overboard. Alaric grabbed a bunch of tails in each hand and followed. He was gone all day, but when he came back with the cook the next morning, he stuck around for after Big Amos left. He untied Flora, and all 3 ran to their places. Flora heard the stick begin knocking at the far end of the ship. She and Sophia smiled at each other and waited for their turn with the rats. But this time, just as the first wave reached them, heavy footsteps sounded at the top of the stairs. This panicked the rats even more than usual. Instead of simply running from the sound of Alaric's stick, they began leaping like fish and scurrying in many directions. Flora felt a split of second of fear. What would Amos do if he found her unchained again? But she couldn't waste the work that Alaric had done hurting the rats. It was too late to hide away. Her body went into a crouch, and when Sophia gave her the signal, she began spinning and kicking. When the last of the rats had been killed or had escaped, Flora turned to face Amos. But it was not the cook. Standing on the bottom step was another man. He took off his hat and smiled. I wondered what all that banging was down here. Cook told me some good but mysterious work was being done on our rat problem. I thought I'd take a look. He stepped onto the floor of the hold and walked toward them. Amos said it was a cat and boy operation, but it looks to me as if we have a secret weapon. He scratched behind one of Flora's ears and ran his hand down Sophia's back to the tip of her tail. If I hadn't seen it for myself, I wouldn't believe it. Hello, Captain, Alaric stammered. Flora caught her breath. What's your name, son? Alaric, the cabin boy. He brought his feet together and made a clumsy salute. Well, Alaric, there's no sailor on this boat working harder than you. The captain clicked his heels and returned the salute. It seems you have found an unexpected role for the ship's pig. I don't suppose the cook knows about this. No, sir. Alaric looked down at the floor. He shuffled his feet. The pig is supposed to be chained up, getting fat. But please don't tell cook, sir. I'm in plenty of trouble as it is. The captain didn't say anything at first, and then a slight smile tugged on his lips. Son, you never know who will step up with the brains and talent in the time of need and be the right one for the job. We'll keep this between us. Shouting from the deck above interrupted the moment. The captain looked up. I better return to topside. We're closing in on our final destination, and we've entered iceberg waters, so we need to be on extra alert. As you can imagine, the precipitation that falls on these coastal areas is significant and can cause a problem with visibility. He laid a hand on Alaric's shoulder. Carry on, sailor. Yes, sir. Alaric saluted again. But can I ask you a question, sir? If it's a quick one. What happens to me once we reach our final destination? The explorer unloads me and the expedition team, and then sails away to pick us up on the other side of the continent. Sorry, let's read that one again. The explorer, which is the name of the ship, unloads me and the expedition I can't read that word this morning. Expedition team then sails away to pick us up on the other side of the continent. You will be part of the skeleton ship's crew. The captain gave him a smile. Meanwhile, the expedition team and I are going by dog sled across the entire span of the Antarctic. Something never done before. Journeying from food station to food station. If we are successful, we will have made history. Flora gazed at him with admiration. Now there was a born leader. Something about him reminded her of Oscar. Alaric jumped in boldly. I was hoping I could go along on the expedition, sir. The captain laughed. Alaric slumped. I'm sorry, the captain said. It's much too dangerous for a boy. Besides, the ship needs every available pair of hands it can get for the difficult trip. Another shout cackled from the top of the stairs. Loud pounding of boots came from right above. The captain looked up again. More icebergs, he muttered. I'd better get upstairs. Keep up the good work, son. But just as the captain stepped on the bottom stair, a bone-numbing jolt knocked Flora off her feet. Her ribs slammed into the floor and knocked the breath out of her. The sound of splintering wood filtered the air, and in a single moment, no one, not even the captain, was in control of anything. Ooh, that's a horrible spot to stop. But there it is. That's the end of chapter 21. I'm anxious to read the next chapter, but we gotta wait, okay? Kisses for you. Kisses for your family. I love you.